Hello, my name is Louise Wentzel, student number 21446815, and welcome to my OPV 122 online badge activity number 1, making a model of the human brain. Your brain is responsible for just about every process in your body. It controls thoughts, emotions, movements, memories, sensations, etc., etc. Did you know that your brain only weighs around 1.36 kilograms and that approximately 75% of that is water? Pretty unassuming for the most important organ in the body, wouldn't you say? Today, in an effort to learn more about the amazing thing that is your brain, we're going to be making a cross-section of the brain to gain a better understanding of the various sections of the brain, as well as their purposes. I'm going to try to make my model as colorful and textured as possible because it'll help me remember each section more clearly. One of the aspects I learned about my brain and that I have now used to train it, so to speak, is the difference between left-brained and right-brained individuals. I have come to the realization that I am right-brained, and therefore I respond much better to creative and innovative and colorful methods of studying, as opposed to just reciting straight facts and figures. Hence, my brain model is going to be colorful and textured. To get started, you'll need the following materials: a pencil to trace and plan with, a black marker to write headings, scissors to cut the wool and paper with, Pritt glue for the paper, white craft glue for the wool, 2 paper clips to help with the tracing, a blank piece of white paper on which you'll trace, a piece of colored paper, I used light green pastel, a printout of the outline of the brain, and wool. As you can see here, I have 7 different colors to correspond to the 7 different parts of the brain. Your materials should therefore look something like this. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is trace the outlines of the brain. As you can see here, I secured my blank page to my printout using the paper clips, and then I held it up to a light source, in this case a window, and slowly went over each and every line. Once you have completed your trace of the outline of the brain, it should look similar to this. I added the names of each of the sections to avoid confusion. Now we can start filling in the segments, so to speak. I will be filling in the segments by piping the craft glue in squiggles in the outlines of each section, and then taking a length of wool and cutting it so I can paste it in squiggly lines, imitating the wrinkles in the brain. There's no specific length you should cut it, but rather take too much than too little. Let's start with the frontal lobe. I'm using blue wool for this part of the brain. The frontal lobe is responsible for voluntary movement, so movement you can control, as well as using expressive language and being able to think critically to organize, plan, and control yourself in order to achieve your goals. Next, the temporal lobe in purple. The temporal lobe is responsible for a myriad of things. While it helps process auditory information and helps us understand what we hear while also processing certain aspects of sight, as the occipital lobe processes visual information, it is also responsible for understanding and processing language and emotions. Next, I'm making the parietal lobe this light green color. This section of the brain is responsible for interpreting the sensory input that our senses, so our eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and skin, send to the brain. This is important for understanding our environment and deciding if we need to act or interact with it to ensure our safety. Have you ever touched a hot stove and immediately pulled your hand away? That was your parietal lobe. Now I'm tackling the occipital lobe and using the red wool to do so. The occipital lobe helps the parietal lobe in that it is responsible for the procession of visual inputs. It helps us see and understand what we see. Now I'm going to be using teal wool for the cerebellum. The cerebellum also helps with voluntary movement, like the frontal lobe, but it also helps with balance and muscle tone. brainstem is the smallest of the sections, and I'm using the yellow wool for it. The brainstem relays the messages from the body, such as temperature, pain, position, pleasure, etc., to the brain and distributes it to the respective lobes for processing. Once you've filled in all your sections, it should look something like this. I love the colors and the textures. But while we wait for the glue to dry properly, I'm going to take this opportunity to reflect on what this experience has taught me. In doing my research, I acquired so much new knowledge about the brain. Not only did I learn about the different lobes and their functions, as I've explained in the video, I've also learned a lot about the anatomy of the brain. For example, that the smoother a brain is, the less intelligent an animal is. And the different stages of development in the brain, as described by people like Piaget, Erikson, Vygotsky, and so on. Because of these three new aspects I learned about the brain, I understand myself and the way I work much better. There is, however, a lot I still don't understand about the brain. I wonder how much we really know about this complex and intricate organ, and whether we truly understand it, or whether our educated guesses are indeed the truth. Another question I have is about brain damage. How are some people able to live normal lives with a form of brain damage and others unable to do so? Why are some lobes of the brain more important than others? I look forward to the time when science has advanced enough for us to be able to answer these questions. As mentioned before, I learned that my brain responds better to creative, colorful, artistic ways of learning due to the fact that I'm right-brained, and I for one know that I'll be benefiting from this discovery for a long time. I would like to give credit to the following sources for helping me create this video. My name is Louise Wentzel, student number 21446815, and I'd like to thank you for watching this video that forms a part of my OPV 122 online badge activity. I hope that you found it entertaining and informative, and that you understand your brain a bit better.